good. Now, I want to kick this off by asking David, how did you get involved with this film with Emilio? Because I know you've done a lot of documentaries, and I've heard Emilio talk about the film, and it really was lit sort of like a documentary where they didn't have all this equipment on top of you guys. Is that one of the reasons you decided to take on this project with him?
Hang on, Paul. I have very revealing photos of David.
You do?
Yes, and so it was a no.
Next question, Paul. No, Emilio had seen this film I had made with Ewan McGregor, Long Way Down. We had a theatrical release a couple of years ago, and Emilio pulled me aside afterwards, and he's like, "Listen, I just written the screenplay. I don't know if Hollywood's going to go for it. Is there any way that you and I can talk about doing this thing, maybe in the way that you shot Long Way Down? You know, we'll do some sort of a low impact, small crew." And that was the beginnings of the conversation. And then when I read the screenplay, I was like, wait a second, we've got to take this to the right level. We've got to make sure that we have film cameras and a proper crew. And then once you start getting getting as close as we had in terms into the process, there was no turning back. And we flew to Spain, and it just became apparent that we weren't going to leave Spain until we finished making the movie. The short version is I fell in love with the screenplay and didn't want to put it down, and felt like it had to be made.
Well, and Emilio, for you as an actor and for working with the rest of the actors in the film, how did that sort of environment help you guys capture the performances you wanted? Because it seems like it would be a little bit more freeing than to have all of that stuff bearing down on top of you.
Of course. No, we had a script that we followed from A to Z, but we shot the film in sequence. So there's a wonderful luxury in doing that, in that you are, whatever happens previous to the next scene sort of informs the journey of the character, informs what's going on for us as filmmakers. So it's a wonderful luxury to be able to shoot in sequence, and the actors carried their own packs. We probably walked about 350 kilometers of the 800-kilometer journey. Everybody was really invested. I think more so. There were no trailers, there were no chairs like the ones we're sitting in now. There were no luxuries on the set. We did have nice catering because the Spanish don't mess around with their food. They take their food very, very seriously. We had our crew was 100% Spanish.
Well, I want to know, in writing, how did you find each of the individual characters that Tom meets up with?
Well, we had always thought that this might be somewhat of a retelling of The Wizard of Oz, that he would bump into the Cowardly Lion and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, and it was a matter of introducing those characters and what would be their modern day foibles. What would be so we created this issue with Deborah Kara Unger's character, with Sarah, that she has this enormous hole in her heart. We created a writer who has writer's block, so he's looking for a brain. And Tom, Martin Sheen's character, of course, is our Dorothy in this tale.
But it's really it's really a classic road trip. It's an incredibly fun road movie, and even though it has this rather serious backdrop and start to the film, it's a lot of fun. We just premiered it here last night, and it was great to see that sort of reaction.
Well, I love the movie, and I want to know, for most sons, they always feel compelled to follow in their father's footsteps, and this is sort of the reverse of that. Was that the initial seed that sent you on this journey to kind of explore the story?
Well, it was that, the idea that through the son, the father becomes awake, becomes whole, and becomes himself and human. For me, personally, I wanted to write something for my father that really captured who he is as a man, as an actor, and as a humanist. I mean, he's one of the most generous and extraordinary cats I've ever met and known in my life. And so, you look back at his resume, you look at Apocalypse Now or Badlands, he's not a cold-blooded killer, he's not an army assassin. This movie is a reflection of who Martin Sheen is in his heart. And for that, I'm so very proud that he finally found a role through me that really explores that.
Well, did he ever collaborate with you on the screenplay, or did
yeah.
you just write the screenplay and then he just took it and ran with it?
No, he was involved, man. You know, I live right down the street from my folks, and which is a good thing and a bad thing. My parents are my best friends. They're married now 50 years in December, and my dad would come over to the house and, you know, knock, knock, knock. Hey, I got an idea. The next day, knock, knock, knock. I got another idea. So some of those ideas are in the movie, some are not. He had some wonderful ones, and then some that were complete lead balloons. So we didn't include them.
Oh, that's funny. Now, from Wisdom in 1987 till today with The Way in 2011, how do you feel you've improved as a filmmaker, and what do you feel is your greatest achievement in that span of time as the man behind the camera?
Right. That I am open to listening to ideas from everyone, whether it's David, my father, the standby painter, the other actors. If they have a wonderful idea, ultimately I'm going to get credit for it as the director, as the writer of the film. So for me, I think early on I was sort of like this. You know, I wrote the script and it's going to be my way, and I wouldn't listen to these brilliant minds or technicians around me at the time. So I think over the years, I think you learn to let things go. You learn to be open. And that's really the only way wonderful things can happen and come in, right?
It's funny you mention that. I got this idea. I didn't really get a chance to tell you about it on set. No, he's incredibly open, and I think I had the benefit of watching these two guys work together, and I don't think we have seen it as as an audience maybe since John and Walter Huston. You have a director who really knows how to bring the best out of his actor because it's his father, and he knows where all the buttons are, and he knows how to get him there. And then you have an actor who really wants to serve it up for his director, who happens to be his son. So I think we as the audience in this case really benefit from this unique relationship.
And Paul, my mother was on the set, and she confided in me halfway through the filming, and she said, "I have not seen your father this disciplined and worked this hard since he was a struggling, starving actor in the early '60s in New York City." And so, when she told me that, I started to weep. I thought, wow, because that's all I wanted. I wanted to deliver for him.
Yeah, no, and you think of Martin Sheen, you think of him as this Irishman, but actually he's half Spanish, right? So here's a film that's inspired by a grandson, dedicated to a grandfather, and I don't think we've seen things that authentic recently out of Hollywood.
Do you think that opens up a road for you guys to collaborate more in the future, or is it something that you're going to kind of protect and keep in this film and maybe not exploit that as much in the future?
We're not sure. It would really depend on the situation, the story. If there was something that we talk about that in the future that inspires me to sit down and bang another script out, then sure. But it's not something we're talking about currently.
And we're actually on a bus right now traveling across America. We've been on the road for about 6 weeks, so right. The collaboration continues.
Right.
We'll tell you when it ends.
Well, for Emilio, I want to know, I've been traveling through the South for a couple of years, and what I've found is that people really miss you on screen.
Right.
And when you have a film like The Way where you're in it, but you're not in it that much, how do you decide how much screen time to give yourself?
Well, that's the issue. You don't want it to look like an ego-driven project, and yet if there's a project that makes sense for me to have a bigger role, then I'll certainly jump in. I love being on both sides of the camera. I don't have to wait for somebody to come out of a trailer or come out of makeup. I'm standing next to the camera and I'm like, all right, are we ready? Are we lit? Let's go. So I actually prefer being in every scene because there is no waiting. So we'll see. I'm hopeful that to get back in front of the camera as well, because I do miss it. You don't choose a life, Dad. You live one.
But you can do this on a bike? Why the hell are we walking?